Wine stood in front of her classroom, watching over the group of cheerful 7-year-olds. Their high pitched giggles echoed through the colorful room as they packed their tiny backpacks, excited to head home. The walls were covered in drawings, clumsy stick figures, and crayon colored suns, but the real warmth in the room came from Vine herself. She had a way of making every child feel seen, heard, and loved. But her smile slowly faded when her eyes fell on a small boy sitting quietly at the back. He wasn't moving, his head was bowed, little hands resting motionless on his lap, as if the noise and joy around him didn't reach him at all. Once heard instantly picked up that boy Rowoon, while the other children rushed out the door. Rowoon didn't even touch his bag, something was off. Wine walked slowly toward him and gently sat on the tiny table beside his chair, her expression full of concern. She leaned slightly, trying to meet his eyes as she softly took his books from his desk. Rowoon finally lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes, wide, glassy, and brown like melted chocolate, met hers, and for a split second her breath hissed. There was something familiar about him. The shape of his lips, the soft curve of his nose, even the little mole resting just below his bottom lip. It can be. She thought he looked so much like him. That resemblance was so striking. It sent a shiver down her spine. Memories flooded her mind, but she pushed them away and focused on the present. Rowoon, why are you sitting here all alone? He didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked down again as if the floor had more comfort than any human face. I miss someone. And who does my cutie pie miss? She slowly helped him stand and lifted his tiny body onto her lap. He clung to her instantly, resting his cheek against her collarbone, his arm wrapped tightly around her like he had been waiting all day for someone to hold him like this. My dad doesn't love me. Vine's heart cracked at those words. She closed her eyes for a second, holding him even closer, as if she could squeeze away all the sadness he carried. Hey, don't ever say that again, okay? Your dad loves you so, so much. Rowoon sniffled, pulling back just enough to look up at her. Then why doesn't he come to see me or hug me like other dads? Wine cupped his tiny face in her hands, her thumbs gently brushing his wet cheeks. Sometimes adults get lost in their problems. They carry heavy things in their hearts that kids can't see. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. You are his little miracle, Rowoon. Just because someone doesn't show love the way you expect doesn't mean they don't feel it. Rowoon blinked, staring at her as if he was trying to believe it. Really, he loves me? Yes, more than you know. And until he learns how to show it better, I will keep reminding you every day how special and loved you are. Deal? Rowoon gave a tiny, hopeful smile, the kind that makes your chest ache with love, and then leaned forward, resting his head gently on Wine's shoulder again. Okay, I like your hugs. Wine chuckled softly and held him tighter, whispering a silent promise to always be there when the word felt too big for his little heart. Wine continued to hold little Rowoon in her arms, her hand gently patting his back in slow, comforting circles. His tiny fingers clung to the fabric of her shirt, and his face was tucked against her shoulder, warm and safe. She could feel his breathing slow, his body relaxing little by her embrace. The classroom, now empty and quiet, felt like a soft bubble away from the rest of the world. She pressed her cheek to his soft hair, murmuring sweet nothings, just warm, reassuring words no child should live without. You are so brave, Rowoon, and I am so proud of you. But just as he was about to shift him slightly to a more comfortable position, a sharp knock echoed from the classroom door. Her body instinctively stiffened. She turned slowly, still holding Rowoon close. In the doorway stood a tall man dressed in all black. His coat hung perfectly straight, pressed without a single crease, and he wore black gloves that gave him a quiet, intimidating presence. His face was emotionless, his posture straight and rigid. He looked more like a trained bodyguard than a school pickup guardian. Wine immediately recognized him. He was the man who picked and dropped Rowoon every day. She had never spoken to him beyond a polite note, and even now his eyes didn't meet hers. Instead, he called out firmly, Rowoon. Rowoon clung tighter to Wine, his little hands fisting the fabric at her back. No, I don't want to go. Wine rubbed his back soothingly, glancing back at the tall man, who now sighed deeply and pulled out his phone. She watched him step back and speak into it a low voice. Sir, he's being stubborn again. No, he won't come. He's with his teacher. There was a brief pause, then the man looked at Wine and took a step forward, holding the phone toward her. His father wants to talk to you. Wine blinked, hesitating. Her hands tightened slightly around her wound. Her heart skipped, part nerves, part confusion. Still, she slowly reached out and took the phone from his gloved hand. Hello. There was silence for a breath. Then a deep, commanding voice spoke from the other end. Yes, the sound of his voice sent a subtle shiver down her spine. It was low, cold, and firm, like someone who was used to control, not warmth. Wine swallowed, trying to steady herself. This is Rowoon's teacher. He didn't want to leave. I just thought you should know he's really missing you. She bit her lip and continued, softly but with conviction. He told me that he thinks you don't love him. That broke my heart. He waits every day hoping you will be the one to pick him up. And he told me he doesn't have a mother. I don't know what happened between you two, and I won't pray. That's your personal life, but children don't understand absence. They feel it as rejection. Still no reply, just quiet breathing on the other end. He doesn't need gifts or fancy clothes. He just needs time, a few minutes of your day to look him in the eye and remind him that he matters. There was a long pause. Then finally, the voice responded, I see. A bit of silence, thank you, and then click. The call ended. Wine stared at the phone for a second longer, blinking in surprise. No name, no apology, no promise, just a cold hum of acknowledgement and silence. She handed the phone back to the bodyguard, who gave a curt nod. Wine turned her attention back to the wound. She gently pulled away from the hug, just enough to see his small, puffy face. His eyes were still a little wet. Wine cupped his cheeks and leaned forward to kiss him on the cheek, soft and warm. All right, my little koala, time to go now. Rowoon frowned, leaning back in with a small whine, but I wanna stay. If you don't go, how will I see you again tomorrow? You have to promise me something. What? Be strong, smile more, and when you see your papa, just hug him really tight, okay? Maybe he needs it even more than you. Rowoon's lips parted slightly in wonder, as if thought had never occurred to him. He nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. Wine gave him one last squeeze and gently stood him on the ground. The bodyguard stepped forward, taking his small backpack. Rowoon walked slowly, his hand still brushing against Wine's fingers until the last step. And as he disappeared through the door, her heart felt just a little heavier. But she also felt something else stir. Why does Rowoon look so much like him? The morning sunlight filtered softly through the sheer curtains as Wine sat in front of her mirror, dabbing a hint of blush on her cheeks. Her eyes looked fresh but carried a depth that had not left in years. She curled her lashes with care, applied a soft gloss, and tied her hair neatly into a low ponytail. It was just another school day. Routine, predictable, safe. She wore a soft pink blouse tucked into a plaited navy jeans, a cardigan layered over it to fight off the early spring chill. With her satchel in one hand and her warm coffee in the other, she stepped out of her small apartment, heart calm and unaware of what the day would hold. But when she entered the classroom, her footsteps slowed, her brows furrowed slightly. Rowoon's seat, last row near the window, was empty. Wine frowned softly. He never missed a day, and if he did, there would have been a message. Still, she shook the worry from her head and began the class, her voice echoing warmly as the children repeated after her in giggles and excitement. She was midway through writing on the board when knock knock. The soft rap on the door brought her to a halt. She turned instinctively with a polite smile, ready to greet a late parent or staff member. But the marker slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Her heart froze. Standing in the doorway was him. Rowoon stood beside a tall, striking man in a sleek black coat. His presence was commanding, confident, and clean. Every inch of him owes the kind of aura you don't forget. His black eyes, sharp jawline, and calm posture could silence a crowd. But Wine didn't need a second glance. Her breath hitched John Jungkook. The name thundered in her chest like a cruel whisper from the past. The man she once fell for, the man who broke her heart without even knowing it. Wine stood on the school rooftop, her hands trembling slightly as the breeze danced around her hair. Her fingers clutched the paper she was going to hand him. Her written confession, but she had not needed it because there he was, standing in front of her. Jungkook, I really like you. I don't know if this is sudden, but I couldn't keep it in anymore. You are. But before she could finish, the heavy metal door slammed open behind him. There you are, Jungkookie. I have been searching for you for so long. Wine's eyes widened. Lena, her classmate, bright smile, long curls, ran toward him and wrapped her arms around his arm without hesitation. Oh, wifey, I was just busy a little. Wine's heart sank. Her hand went limp, the paper drifting to the floor like a withered leaf. Lena looked over at Wine and smiled politely, too politely. Oh, sorry for interrupting. Excuse us. With that, she dragged Jungkook away. He didn't even glance back. Your smile cracked like glass. That night you cried into your pillow until it soaked through. After that, he avoided him every hallway, every group project, every eye contact, and eventually, time passed 5 years of distance. Now, he stood in front of her classroom door, older, sharper, dressed like a CEO, but those same familiar eyes stared at her with something unreadable. That's why Rowoon looks like him. The nose, the lips, the mole beneath his mouth, it all makes sense now. Wine cleared her throat, composed herself. She didn't blink, didn't smile. Yes, her voice was polite, distant, not a flicker of warmth. Jungkook took a step forward, his eyes never leaving her face. But she avoided his gaze, as if looking directly at him would unearth too many buried feelings. Instead, she bent down gently and opened her arms. Rowoon, come here, sweetheart. The little boy beamed and ran into her embrace. She picked him up effortlessly, hugging him to her chest like he belonged there. Her lips pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. There is my brave boy. Jungkook was silent, his stare heavy, watching the way she touched his son with pure affection. But Wine didn't spare him a glance. She turned slightly away from him, swaying gently as she held her wound, refusing to acknowledge the ache rising in her chest. He probably still thinks I was foolish. Maybe I was, but I won't give him that power again. Wine smiled softly as she tucked Wound's collar properly and smoothed down his little jacket. His cheeks were glowing with joy. Miss Wine, today Appa brought me to school. I'm so happy. His tiny fingers held onto her arm, excitedly bouncing as he told her about the drive with his dad, how he sat in the front seat, and even how Appa brought him his favorite chocolate milk. Wine smiled and nodded, gently patting his head, but her gaze never drifted toward the tall man standing quietly near the door. She didn't look at Jungkook, not even once. He, however, stood silently and watched her with an unreadable expression. Something about the way he carried herself, so calm, so composed, yet emotionally distant, tugged at his memory like a forgotten melody. Where was the wine who used to smile at him every time their eyes met in the library? The girl who left colorful sticky notes on his locker every morning, sweet messages, doodles, encouragement for his tests. He remembered how he found her waiting alone on the rooftop one day, holding her confession in shaking hands. And how instead of facing her directly, he stayed away, not because he don't like you back then, but because he knew she would be hurt deeply. Later, one of her closest friends had angrily confronted him. She used to leave those notes every day, Jungkook. She liked you, and the day she stopped was the day she found out you were married. You didn't even give her a proper answer. That guilt never truly left him. And now fate had spun its threads again. And here she was standing before his child, loving him so naturally as if she was mean to. But she wouldn't look at Jungkook not once. She stood straightened herself and turned to the whiteboard. Alright everyone, open your storybooks. Let's begin today's reading. Jungkook's jaw clenched slightly. She was ignoring him, pretending like nothing existed between them, like they were strangers. Then suddenly, as Wine was about to step forward the board, she felt a strong hand wrap around her wrist. Hey, what are you, Jungkook? What are you doing? But he didn't speak. He gently tugged her away past the little eyes watching curiously and down the hallway. Jungkook, stop. What will the kids think? Are you out of your mind? But he didn't stop until he found an empty classroom. He pulled her inside, shut the door, and locked it behind him. What the hell is this behavior? You can't just drag me away in the middle of the class. Jungkook stood there, calm, composed, glasses sitting perfectly on his sharp nose, but behind that calmness was something shaking, something emotional. Are you the wine teacher Rowoon keeps talking about? She froze. Why? Why would he talk about me a lot? Her mind was suddenly filled with questions. Why is he asking me this? Does Rowoon say things at home? Her heart was pounding in her chest. He talks about you all the time, says you listen to him, care for him. He said, he pauses, voice tight. He said, I should marry you, that he wants you as his mother. One's breath catch in her throat. What? Jungkook, are you out of your mind? You're married. You have a wife. Jungkook looked at her for a long moment, then removed his glasses slowly, his eyes filled with a deep pain. He is dead to me. What? I'm sorry, she's alive, but she's dead to me. Wine stepped back slightly, her chest rising and falling. She could feel the tears stinging her eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't know. But Rowoon, he seems mentally disturbed sometimes. Sad. That's why I give him more attention than the other kids. He feels so lonely. Jungkook's eyes lowered, voice trembling slightly. She never wanted him. When she was pregnant, I catch her twice with another man, her boyfriend. I thought she would change. I prayed for it. He took a breath, swallowing back the emotions building in his throat. But one day I found out she went to the hospital to abort him. Wine gasped, her hand covering her mouth. I was so angry, I begged her not to do it. I told her I would raise him, I would take care of everything, and she gave birth and left me. For a rich man, she walked out like Rowoon was just a mistake she regretted. Wine's tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. Her heart broke for that little boy who always looked sad, who clung to her like she was his safe place. That little soul, how could someone leave him like that? Jungkook looked at her, really looked at her, his eyes red with emotion. I know, you liked me once. I saw it. I remember everything. I couldn't respond back, then I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't recognize her at first either, but Lena, she fooled me too. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. Another tear slid down her cheek. She looked away, chest aching, mind spinning with everything he had just confessed. All this time, she thought he was cold, married, untouchable, but he was carrying his own storm. A broken man, a wounded father. Wine stood still, her breath catch somewhere between her chest and throat. Her tears had dried, but the warmth on her cheeks had not. Jungkook's eyes searched hers desperately. Wine, please, I want you to be my wife for Rowoon. He needs someone who understands him, someone who loves him without conditions, and you do that. She flinched, her heart already pulled in every direction, now felt completely tangled. He took a small step closer. He's stubborn sometimes, but you handle him like you were born to. You know his moods, his triggers, even his favorite chocolate milk. I couldn't teach that to anyone, it's just you. Wine looked down, still shaken. Her mind was spinning with thoughts. This wasn't just about romance anymore. This was about a child, a broken heart, a home. I don't know, Jungkook, this is sudden. But he stepped even closer. Then don't do it for me, do it for Rowoon. Just then, knock knock, the door rattled. A small, scared voice came from the hallway. Dad, are you here? Where is my wine? Please don't hurt her. Wine's eyes widened. She moved toward the door, but Jungkook was already there. His face crumbled in guilt and pain as he quickly unlocked the door. The moment it opened, Rowoon burst inside, teary eyed, voice cracking with fear. Wine immediately knelt on one knee and opened her arms. Rowoon, how did you find me, baby? He ran straight into her embrace, burying his wet face into her shoulder. She cradled him close, rubbing his back gently. I was scared. You both were gone, and then this door was locked from inside, and I thought someone took you away. Wine's heart broke again. She glanced at Jungkook, who stood silently, guilt in his eyes. Oh, sweetheart, I'm fine. Look, I'm right here. See? Rowoon pulled back, his face still damp, but a small bunny smile peeked through. It reminded her so much of Jungkook that she felt her chest ache. That smile, you got it from your dad, didn't you? She gently pinched his cheek and he giggled softly. Rowoon leaned into her arms and Jungkook slowly stepped beside them, crouching down. So, what's your answer, Ryan? She hesitated again, her eyes darting between Jungkook and Rowoon. So much had happened, so many feelings she buried were now spilling over. She looked down at Rowoon, whose little fingers held onto her scarf tightly, looking up with hope and love. Whiny, her breath hitched. She couldn't say no to those eyes. Not anymore. Okay, I'm ready. Rowoon gasped with a huge grin. So, can I call you mommy? Now, Wine blinked and then smiled playfully. I'll think about it. No, I already practiced it 20 times in front of the mirror. What? You sneaky little. Now I can't take it back. Chunguk finally burst into soft laughter, the kind that made his shoulders relax and his eyes crinkle for the first time in what felt like years. He placed his hand gently on Rowoon's head, then looked at Wine, his eyes sparkling. If you truly love someone with all your heart, they will find their way to you again, no matter how far, how long. It's written in fate, no one can erase it. Wine looked into his eyes, finally meeting his gaze with calm acceptance. Maybe this was what God had planned all along, not just a love story, but a home, a place to belong, a family made from broken pieces healing together.